So hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first Sarasota Audubon Zoom meeting. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm Karen Willey, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the Nature Center manager, and I've become the Zoom manager now. So I'm going to moderate the meeting and basically hope to keep everything rolling. Jean Dubie, our esteemed acting president, will be starting with a short meeting, and then she'll turn it over to Margie Haas, our program director, who will then introduce our speakers, David and Tammy McQuaid. So before we get started, I'll go over a few housekeeping items. We'll be taking questions in the Q&A, so you can post that at any time. So at the bottom of your screen, I see there's a question there. Oh, Linda Fields put a greetings, but your Q&A is for questions for the speakers. And if you want to chat or say anything else, have questions about Zooming, put that in the chat box and I'll be sure to respond to the chat as needed. But the Q&A will be then moderated by Margie afterwards, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can. So we may not have time for all of them. And I think that gets everything. Yep. So as time allows, we'll answer your questions at the end. And if you have something you just want to say, to everyone, you could everyone can monitor the chat as they want, but I'm sure you won't be monitoring the chat because you'll be listening to our wonderful speakers. So we have 103 folks on right now, which is great. And we probably have a few join us as we go. And we'll turn it over to Jean Dubie, acting president of Sarasota Audubon.
Hi, everybody. What an adventure. Karen has worked so hard to get this Zoom thing working, and she and I have been at it all summer long to get it to where it is. And boy, I think you succeeded, Karen. So my name is Jean Dubie. I'm the acting president of the Sarasota Audubon Society. And the first thing I want to say to everybody is that due to COVID, as you may all know by now, we have closed the Nature Center and suspended all of our activities until the end of December. Excuse me, that fell. We are still having board meetings every month. So at every board meeting, subsequent board meeting, 3 before the end of the year, we will discuss and figure out what's going on with COVID, and if there are any changes, we will let you know. So there we go. Okay, and now I want to talk about election of officers. For the members who are with us, they may remember that at the March and April meetings every year, a slate of officers is presented by a nominating committee, and nominations from the floor are allowed. But in March and April, we had no meetings. So what we've devised is a way of our members participating in voting. And later on, after this meeting, Karen is going to send out a Survey Monkey questionnaire. It's just one or two questions, by the way, to let you know who the officers are who's standing for election, who the nominating committee is. Please respond to that, and we'll give you 24 hours to do that. And then the nominating committee can go and look at the results, and then there will be an announcement, possibly by e-blast. We haven't quite figured that out yet, but we will let you know what the outcome is. Strange times, isn't it? So at the October general meeting also, our bylaws state that we have to present our members with the financial statements of the year just passed, which ended May 31st. So we're going to, what I've done We keep all of our bookkeeping in QuickBooks, and it's quite voluminous. So we were able to collapse it down into Excel spreadsheets. And here I'm going to show you the balance sheet as of 5/31. So let me first say that the financial situation of our Audubon is really very, very healthy. As you can see, we have cash and CDs of $213,000, and our endowment fund is now up to $284,000. We have some sales inventory of 4,000 plus and some other things, and our total current assets are over $500,000. Our fixed assets, which is basically the building was logged in 5 years ago at $1,305,000, and every year we have to offset that with depreciation. So the net amount of our building right now is $1,104,724. So our total assets are $1.6 million. Our liabilities, as you see, are very minimal. It's always just the credit card bill that we haven't paid at the end of the month. And so we owed $1,673 in that. Can you go down just a little bit, Karen, to the bottom there? Okay, great. So our equity, so there we are. The building is 1.104 million. And then we have restricted funds. We receive money from various sources, mainly from donations, by the way. And as of 5/31, our quad fund was 55,814. Our building fund was 10,000 plus. Our Celery Fields Explorers Fund, that's our children's program, which incidentally is also suspended for at least until the new year. And our endowment fund, of course, is restricted. And we have a scholarship fund of 22,795. So our total restricted funds were 397,316. That means we cannot spend that money. We can only spend it on the things that it's designated for. And we have unrestricted assets of 77,929. And actually, for the year ended 5/31, we had net income of 25,871. And I'll go over the operating statement now. So there we go. So there's the operating statement. So we had unrestricted donations in of 57,986, membership dues 16,000 plus, and various other things, monitoring income 2,400, education net, that's offset by any costs of 5850. We earned a little interest of 2920. Our sales from our store were 24,554, which is really incredible. And the cost of goods sold 14,000. So a net profit there of about 10,000. Our guided walks and day trips 3,000 plus. So we had total income of 98,473. And our expenses below, administrative expenses, everything to do with running the nature center. And I don't mean the gardens or the programs. Those are supplies, and I can't quite think of the other things, but it's a very modest amount. Insurance, unfortunately, is very expensive, 10,624. And then our nature center and garden expenses were 19,508. So to keep the nature center going and to keep the gardens going, that's how much it cost us. And in this past year, we were able to take on part-time staff, and that amounted to 25,000 plus. We spent 3,000 on advocacy, and our membership costs were about $5,000. So our total expenses were 72,000 plus, and so our income over expenses was 25,871, which is really great. So that's put us in very good shape. If anybody wants a copy of these, they can email in to info@sarasotaAudubon.org, and we'd be happy to let you take a look. If you want to look at the QuickBooks financials, we'd be happy to let you have those as well. So there we are, a healthy balance sheet. Okay, The next thing I wanted to just update you on the quad. Many of you know that I'm going to read some of my notes here. So on October the 6th, the Board of County Commissioners unanimously approved to put 3 of the quad parcels adjacent to the celery fields under a conservation easement. And that's a marvelous outcome for birds and the environment. There was a possibility, as you all know, that they could have been sold off by the county, those lots, for any kind of commercial use. And so the grassroots movement, Audubon, and other organizations came up with a solution and presented it to the Board of County Commissioners, and they went with it. So the facts, the easement will be stewarded by the Conservation Foundation of the Gulf Coast, who were a really good partner in trying to get this organized. Approval was also given to Sarasota Audubon to restore and manage the lands. We're talking about 27 acres. And so over the summer, the Conservation Foundation and the Sarasota Audubon worked with the county to get these agreements in place. And believe me, it was a big headache. And after 6 months, we finally got it done. So this is really great. So what will we manage? We will be managing the southeast and northeast parcels. Karen, do you have that map? So the southeast and northeast parcels, and for about 5 acres of the southwest parcel. We originally asked for 2 of the parcels, just the eastern ones, but the county decided to throw in the extra parcel. But the southwest parcel, the county has reserved the right to put something on that land, 6 acres of it. So basically that southwest parcel, we will manage half of it, and they're planning on probably building a county building on there. It could be the historical archives, we're not sure, they're not sure either. But whatever happens on the southwest parcel is the red one on the extreme left. Yeah, there. So whatever the county does on that property, it has to conform to the conservation easement guidelines. So they can't go ahead and put a 10-story building or an industrial complex or whatever. So that's a really big coup. And we will manage the rest of it. So the Conservation Foundation and Sarasota Audubon have agreed to jointly raise funds for the restoration, because the southeast parcel in particular is one that is about 10 acres. The one on the right, the red bottom right, that's the southeast parcel. And we are, that was what we originally wanted. We wanted that. And the one to the north there with the pond stays there, because that is a stormwater pond which drains all of the 4 parcels. But we have the ability to do something to the pond, maybe do some vegetation planting or whatever, and certainly surrounding it. So to restore and make this suitable habitat for birds and wildlife is going to take a considerable amount of money. And our plans will consist of, as I said, increased habitat for wildlife, but while being mindful of water quality, because this entire area drains 3,000 acres upstream. The water eventually goes into Philippi Creek. The celery fields itself is doing a fantastic job of purifying the water. And on our parcels, we want to also contribute to that purification. So we need to raise funds for the restoration and for future maintenance, because we have a management agreement with the county, which means that Sarasota Audubon within 21 months has to put forward a plan that will tell the county what we're going to do. We can do it before that, by the way. So some of you began donating funds as far back as last November, when the BCC originally asked the Gulf Coast Community Foundation and us to work together with the county to try and figure out this plan. And some of you have already donated funds this week, which is really wonderful. So currently we have about $65,000 or $70,000. The Conservation Foundation also is taking donations, and they have about $50,000. So we're getting there, but we need a lot of money. So we hope that you will feel that this is an important project to donate to, and we will let you know as plans develop. We will keep you posted. And when the Nature Center is open, we'll be able to do presentations about the process as we go along, excuse me. So I want to thank other members of the SAS Quad Conservation Team: Rob Wright, Margie Haas, Karen Willey, and Matthew Press. They all helped me along the way, and we helped each other to make this happen. So it's a great, great victory for birds and for the environment. So yay! Okay, and now Margie, it's your turn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jean. I just really want to acknowledge you, Jean, for being so so dynamic in getting the quads for us, Sarasota Audubon, and for the Conservation Foundation. It's been a pleasure to do what little I could to help you, but you've been so important for this. So it's my pleasure to talk about big year birding. Ever since I became a birder when I moved down here 6 years ago, I've just been totally intrigued with the idea of doing a big year. I haven't done one yet, but I'm an armchair supporter of them all the way. So it's my great pleasure to welcome back from last year Tammy and David McQuaide, the avid and expert birders that they are. They'll be speaking about their big year birding, and I hope you'll even explain to us exactly what big year birding is about. They're back, as I say, by popular demand when they spoke to us just 1 year ago about pelagic birding in the Gulf of Mexico. So Tammy and Dave have always had a love of the outdoors and birds, but it changed dramatically in 2012 when they saw the movie The Big Year. Counting birds and deliberately targeting species had always had a particular appeal, which started with a big weekend in 2013 and hasn't stopped since. So Tammy and David are high school sweethearts, married for 34 years. They work together and bird together. In 2019, they did what they called a, quote, working big year, unquote. They will share some of their highs and their lows and all the adventures in between while seeing 788 species in the US, all the while working full time. I'm so happy to have you guys back. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you. Just want to thank the Audubon for having us speak tonight, and I'm going to try to share my screen, and I'm a little technology challenged, so we'll see how this works. You all will have to let me know if I'm working. And slideshow play. Okay, can everybody see our opening slide? Good.
Good deal.
All right. So again, thank you to the Sarasota Audubon for the invitation to speak to you tonight, and thank you everyone for attending. I didn't think I was going to be nervous because we weren't standing in front of a big crowd, and I have discovered I am just as nervous as if I was standing in front of a big crowd. Unlike a lot of big year birders, we didn't start out our year planning to do a big year. In fact, we didn't even really expect to have anywhere near the number of birds that we ended the year with. We work full time, and we really thought it would be impossible to do a big year until we retire. We have clients in over 40 states. We get to travel to see those clients on an annual basis. And most of our meetings with the clients are at night, so we get to bird during the day. And so for the last 3 years, we've been able to accumulate over 600 birds in a calendar year for the lower 48, which we were very pleased with. We've always hoped that we would reach that magical number of 700 birds in a year. And we thought maybe there was a possibility in 2019 if because technology had advanced with our work. Little did we know with COVID how important that was, but technology had advanced so that we could take our work with us more on the road. And so we thought we might be able to get out a little more. And we really thought we were going to be doing more strategic trips where we were going to be looking for life birds or birds we've never seen before. And but some things changed. And so what I want to talk about now is what happened at the beginning of the year that caused our goal for 2019 to kind of change a little bit. On January 1st, we do a big year with our best birding friends, Erie and Jennifer Warren, and we accumulated 121 birds on January 1st. And we start birding from before sunrise, and we bird well into the night, and we do it only in our home county, only in Lee County, Florida. So we had 121 birds on January 1st. Then we found some cheap tickets to Denver, Colorado. It was a straight shot. We could fly up to Denver and back all in the same day. So Erie and Jennifer, again, joined us on this trip. We flew up to Denver on a 6 a.m. flight, and we flew back from Denver on a red eye and arrived back in Fort Myers, I think around 9 a.m. the next day. And by the end of January 12th, we'd accumulated 211 birds for the year. Then the following weekend, we'd heard about a white-throated thrush that had showed up in Arizona. That was a life bird for us. It's a very rare bird. We were really excited. So we hopped on a plane, took a long weekend, and in Arizona, we got the white-throated thrush and some other year birds. And by the end of January 20th, we were up to 263 birds for the year. On our way home, we stopped off in Texas and birded for 2 days. We ended up with a hook-billed kite. We had a crimson-collared grosbeak, which was a life bird for us. And then there was a golden-crowned warbler that had been hanging out in Texas from the previous year. We were able to get it in 2018 and now in 2019. So in the first 3 weeks of the year, we were already at 288 birds for the year. The following weekend, we had a friend up in Massachusetts who told us there was a dovekey that was swimming around a dock in Provincetown, and a dovekey was a life bird that had been eluding us, so we were very excited. And that weekend, we hopped on a plane, flew into Boston, drove out to Provincetown, and got fabulous views of a dovekey. And then we went over to Race Point and ended up getting thick-billed murre, which was another life bird. So by the first 27 days of January, we were already at 314 birds. By the end of March, we were at 490 birds, and we thought, maybe we're doing a little better than we had anticipated. And so we decided we were no longer just gonna chase lifers. We decided we were gonna do what we called our working big year.
So let me give you a little bit of trivia about our year. And every red dot that you see on the screen is where an eBird checklist was made. We literally birded from the tip of Maine down to the Florida Keys, to the Bering Sea off of Alaska, all the way down to Hawaii, and everywhere in between, with a heavy emphasis around the borders, you'll notice, especially the coastal borders and the southern border. We covered 39 states last year and 239 counties. We did that by spending 140 nights in hotels. Now, if you do the math, that's one hotel every 2.6 days, or roughly 20 weeks out of the year we spent living in a hotel.
Almost every weekend.
Some of the rooms were actually nice. I mean, we enjoy staying at Hampton Inns and Hiltons, and again, whenever possible, we try and stay there. Some of the places were a little bit more rustic, we shall say. And this is actually the place that we stayed in Big Bend, Texas, when we went to get the Kalimba warbler. And they're really like a modified Ted's shed with a portable air conditioning unit put on it. And as soon as you turn the air conditioning unit off, the inside of the Ted shed goes immediately to about 100 degrees inside. Now, what you can't see is the bathrooms are actually about 100 yards to the right in this picture. There's one bathroom for all of the Ted sheds. However, nothing compared to what we were to encounter when we went to Gamble, Alaska. Gamble is on an island about 40 miles away from Russia. The rooms were extremely modest, to say the least. The bathrooms were even more modest, to say the least. But you knew that you were in a top-notch facility when you see this sign that says, just as a precaution, please inform us as soon as you see this guy or any other pests around. That's encouraging when you're checking in.
For those of you who don't know, that's a bed bug.
And just, to add emphasis to that, on the bulletin board in the community room is a sign for Houdini's Bed Bug Services. That's the kind of place that you're staying in Gamble. And again, the walls were so thin in there that you could literally hear the guy next door breathing. Of course, that is assuming that the native kids aren't throwing rocks at the window at 3 a.m. or deciding to climb up on top of your building and jumping up and down on the roof to keep you awake. So again, Gamble is a unique experience, to say the least. Now, getting there, we had 120 flights. We spent a tremendous amount of time in the air. We became platinum on Delta last year. We were gold members on American and United. However, we flew also some lesser known airlines like Bering Air. And it might be a little hard to see, but this guy here with the green camo pants and the green t-shirt, he's our captain. Usually I'm used to kind of seeing a captain with bars on his, on his shoulders and a nice white pressed suit. This guy was in a t-shirt, and we actually happened to run into him at the pub that morning when we were eating breakfast. Again, the airplanes were a little bit more modest, no steward or stewardess. The seats were getting a little ripped and torn. It was a very no frills flight. And again, when you're flying that often, you run into a lot of different situations. We had a fair amount of flights last year that were canceled, that were delayed. Here we're all smiling big because of the fact that we had been grounded on Gamble for 2 extra days because of fog. And here we were just excited to get off the island. So again, everybody's smiling in this photograph because we were excited to get off the island. If we go through and take a look, we actually drove over 36,000 miles. And we did that with over 30,000 of those miles in rental cars. They were not our cars. And if you look really close, you'll notice this particular car has a lot of mud strewn all over it. It's fairly dirty. It was funny how we never seemed to turn the cars back in as clean as what they were when we picked them up. But again, a lot of time spent in rental cars. We spent actually 5 days birding by ATV in Gamble because of the fact that in Gamble, there are virtually no cars or very, very few vehicles at all. So you get around and you bird across the island by ATV. So that was actually kind of a fun experience. Probably one of the most enjoyable forms of transportation we had was sitting in an air-conditioned combine last October in Louisiana, where we got to go through a rice field with a farmer and look for rails as they were flushing out from in front of the combine. And as you can see on the left here, that was our main target species, a yellow rail, although we actually had quite a few different species of rail on the day. Just a really fun trip. Of course, whenever you're going through and putting that many miles on, you're bound to have some problems along the way. And in the last 12 months, because of all of the dirt roads that we're driving on and unimproved roads and rocky terrain, we've blown 4 tires too. So again, this is one of the 4 tire changes that we've done in the last 12 months now. And again, that's our friends Ari and Jennifer with us who were instrumental in changing this particular tire. Again, getting there.
So now it's my turn, so I'm going to make him be quiet. We also got there by boat. And so we spent 27 days on the water with 7 overnights. 67 of our pelagic birds were in 2019. So we had 67 birds on the water that counted towards our year. We discovered relocation cruises in 2019. A relocation cruise is where the cruise lines are going to move their ships from Southern California up to Vancouver, and then that prepares the boat for the Alaska summer. And then in the fall, they bring the boats back from Vancouver down to Southern California, where they're going to cruise the Southern Caribbean and Hawaii. And that relocation part of the cruising keeps the cruise ship offshore in prime pelagic waters. And so you're able to look for birds on a wonderful cruise ship. It's very comfortable. You can have deck chairs. You get to have your scope. You're protected from the weather. You're protected for the most part from the wind because you can adjust which side of the boat that you're looking at birds on. It's a little chilly because, again, it's the Pacific Ocean and the water is cold, and then in the spring and in the fall it's chilly. But overall, it is probably the most relaxing, fun, easy form of pelagic birding. Very reasonable because, again, there's not a lot of stops. There's no stops for the cruise ship. So we were able to get 3- and 4-night stays starting at like $400 per person. That includes all your meals, and even, I think one of them, we had a balcony room that was right down the deck from where we observing the birds. So really a great way to look at pelagic birds. We had things like the flesh-footed shearwater, Hawaiian petrel, fork-tailed storm petrel. We had a whole flock of ancient murrelets one evening off the deck. Again, we're big fans of the relocation cruise. No big year would be complete without going out on the water with Debbie Shearwater out of Monterey and Half Moon Bay. Last year, unfortunately, Debbie retired, so it was her last year, and we were able to spend 2 days on the water with her, and she is our mentor and our friend, and so it was really great to get to be with her during our working big year. And Debbie's trips are always great. We get great views of pink-footed shearwaters, bullers, shearwaters. Michael Brothers does a pelagic off the east coast of Florida, Cape Canaveral, where we get to bird the whole day with all of our Florida birding friends. It's a fun day. We get to see some great birds. And in 2019, we had a pair of white-tailed tropic birds that hung out at the boat for like a half hour and just gave us fabulous views. Brian Pattison has a pelagic trip out of Hatteras, North Carolina on his boat, the Stormy Petrel. He calls the trips in the spring his spring blitz. We call his trips in the spring barf-lagics because we've never been on one of his trips where people aren't deathly ill off the back of his boat. It is one rough trip, but you get some great birds, some great views. Last year we had black-capped petrel. We didn't have all the rarities last year that some people did. We just didn't pick the right days, but it's a trip that you have to do as a big year birder no matter what. The Yankee Freedom is a great trip out of Key West to the Dry Tortugas. We make this trip every year. We just really enjoy it. We get to go snorkeling. It's an air-conditioned boat. They serve meals. And there you can see the masked booby colony off of Hospital Key. And the last several years, they've had a very rare black noddy that likes to hang out at the coal docks. So that's a must. We love Maine, and I think I saw some people from Maine on here today. In the summertime, Maine is gorgeous. It's so hot and miserable down here, so we love going to Maine in the summertime. And we go out on to Vinyl Haven on a ferry. It's an island. And from there, we take Captain John Drury on his little lobster boat out to Seal Island, where we get our red-billed tropic bird. And the red-billed tropic bird should not be there. This bird, nobody's figured out why for the last almost 10 years. It goes there every summer and just kind of hangs out, and fortunately for us, gives us a great bird for our year. Additionally, we get Atlantic puffin, razorbills, king eiders, harlequin ducks. There's a whole colony of Arctic terns. It's just my favorite trip. San Diego pelagics are really important. This is a picture from 2018, and there were the top 7 big year birders. Were all 7 of us were on that trip in 2018. The reason why we're all there is because San Diego pelagics is where you're going to get your rarities and where you're going to get your really good birds. We had Nazca booby on that trip, black storm petrel, red-footed booby. You just never know what you're going to get. The Brookline Bird Club does a pelagic off of Hyannis, Massachusetts. This was our first year doing that trip. It's a 36-hour trip. You spend the night on the boat. The first day, it was a little rough, but then it quieted right down. On this trip, I actually broke my finger, which Dave's going to talk about a little bit later, but we had a great trip, and we had an extremely rare Bermuda petrel. For those of you who don't know, Bermuda petrels were, until a few years ago, thought to be extinct. And truthfully, they shouldn't be off of Massachusetts, but this guy was off of our boat, and he flew around for about a half hour and gave everybody just spectacular views. We also had that white-faced storm petrel, which was a target bird for that trip. This was the morning on that boat. We woke up to a beautiful sunrise and had Wilson storm petrels dancing behind the boat right on the water. Gorgeous trip. The Island Packers off of Ventura, California do a pelagic around the Channel Islands. Again, this is a must-do pelagic trip this year. In 2019, 7 of the top 7 birders were on this trip, where you're going to get sooty shearwater, Scripps' murrelet, black-finned shearwater. Again, just a great trip. Dave and I couldn't go to Alaska in the spring because we had to work. And so unlike most big year birders, we missed out on the spring trip, but we did arrange to do a fall vacation there. And that's where we went to Gamble and St. Paul as well. But our pelagic trip was out of Kenai Fjords, and just breathtaking with the glacier and all the rock formations. We had marble murrelets right next to the boat, tufted puffin, horned puffin, red-faced cormorants, a great trip. Dave and I, as you all know from our presentation last year, we have our own boat. It's the McQuade's. We go out with our friends, and we get some fabulous birds right out in the Gulf of Mexico. Corey shearwater, brown booby, northern gannets, Jaegers, storm petrels, phalaropes. The Gulf is full of birds. Probably the smallest boat we were on was this little 10-foot Zodiac. And the story this day was we were sitting at a marina, and there was a rock jetty, and someone had reported a Nazca booby. We sat there all day, actually met one of our friends that's on the call today, Lorna, and we were all looking for this Nazca booby. And we got so tired of sitting there, and we were just convinced this Nazca booby was probably on the backside of that rock jetty, and he was laughing at us. So we thought we would outsmart the bird, and we rented this little Zodiac, and we went out there to see if we could get our Nazca booby. So we raced out there at like 2 miles an hour, and we rounded the corner to get our target bird, and we had brown pelican. No Nazca booby. So fortunately, we did get a Nazca booby on another trip.
You know, a lot of people talk about big years in a nostalgic way where it just sounds really exciting and you just go from one, exciting bird to another. But there's another side of it too. As you're going through and birding, this is a very tiring marathon. And as your body gets worn down, you become more susceptible to illness and more susceptible to injury. And we were definitely no stranger to that. On our January trip early last year, where we went out to Arizona and Texas, on the flight out, I started feeling bad, and come to find out, I had a 104-degree temperature. I went to urgent care. They couldn't figure it out, so I just battled through for 4 days. Sleeping in the car. Tammy would drive to the next spot. I would sleep until we would get there, get up, we'd bird, we go get our bird, hop back in the car, she'd drive, I would sleep. And you just make do with what you can. Fortunately, with Tammy and I, there's 2 of us. We can always kind of trade back and forth. If one of us is not feeling well, or if one of us is tired, we can go through and have the other help pick up the slack. In September, we had just gotten back from Gamble. We were in Anchorage waiting to go out to St. Paul the next day, and we were trying to find a rock ptarmigan. And we were on the side of a very steep mountain trying to find the rock ptarmigan in very, very thick fog. And she went one way around the mountain. I went the other way, came into a very steep ravine, dropped into the ravine, rolled down about a 20-foot ravine, sprained my ankle. That's a picture of me on the left there at urgent care, just before they took x-rays to see if I had broken anything. And again, about 3 weeks later, we're on the Pelagic out of Hyannisport, Massachusetts. And you can see Tammy's knuckle there. When we were first going out on that Saturday, the seas were, in the 8-foot range with an occasional 10-footer, and the boat rocked one way, and she went to grab the railing, and the boat started lunging back up. Her finger caught a fishing rod holder, and it jammed it, and it broke her finger. There was fortunately a doctor on board who recommended that we take bolt cutters and cut her rings off. She said, absolutely no way. So the doctor said, ice it and bird with your hand over your head. So she would be birding like this for a good part of the trip. And then the worst accident actually happened at the end of the year last year on December 28th. We were on what's called the Mohihi Trail, which is a very difficult trail we'll talk about. And she slid, twisted her ankle, actually fractured her ankle, tore all the ligaments in her ankle. That's her in the middle with her walking boot on it. We both still have ankle problems today, even though we're, quite a few months, since it happened. But yet again, she was a trooper. She birded the rest of our trip in Hawaii on a broken ankle. And we finished off the year because, again, when one couldn't do something, the other would pick up and carry us, on to the next spot. I want to take a few minutes and talk about 3 hikes in particular that I think you hear a lot about. And these are hikes that definitely, when you do them, they leave an impression in your mind. And again, the first is what we call the Kalima Warbler hike in Big Bend, Texas. Now, first of all, that's the Kalima Warbler on the left, one of Tammy's photographs. The Kalima Warbler doesn't arrive in the US until mid-April. So it's not like you can say, hey, I want to go there in January or December when it's nice and cool. You got to wait until mid-April. It's a pretty long hike. It's typically a 6 to 8 mile hike. You're starting the hike at 5,500 foot of elevation. you're climbing a fair amount of elevation to get up to where they are. It's a fairly grueling hike. So our game plan was to start an hour before sunrise. We have headlights that we wear on our head, and you walk past the sign that says "Beware of mountain lions and bears in the area." So when you're hiking in the dark, everything you hear, you kind of jump and you start listening to see, is that a mountain lion tracking us? But when we started the hike, it was 50 degrees. By the time we got back down to the car, it was 100 degrees. Again, you go through a huge temperature swing from the time you leave to the time you get back. Again, the fact that you've got to leave so early in the morning to be able to have as little time as possible around 100 degrees, makes it a fairly difficult hike. The Himalayan snowcock in the Ruby Mountains of Nevada. Again, another hike that gets a lot of notoriety for it. Again, what I think makes this kind of a difficult hike is the fact that you start your day at about 3:30 in the morning. 3:30, we leave the hotel. We drive 45 minutes to get to the trailhead. We start hiking the trailhead at 4:15 in the morning. Trailhead is around 8,100 feet of elevation. Now, again, I know we've got people all over the US on this call. In Fort Myers at our house is 13 feet above sea level. So that gives you a little comparison. We're at 13 feet for most of our life. Here we're starting a hike at 8,100 feet, and we're climbing to 10,100 feet. And you've got to do it and be at the top by sunrise. Sunrise is when the snowcock come out and they start calling, and you can actually see them, because shortly thereafter they go back and they hide in their crevices and you never see them. So you've got to be there at sunrise. So just the fact that you're starting at 3 a.m. in the morning, you're climbing 2,000 feet of elevation, it makes it kind of an interesting and difficult hike. Our most difficult hike by far is the Mohihi Trail in Kauai. And it's difficult before you ever get out of the car. Fortunately, we have our guide here in the photograph, Mandy Talpas, and she, I think, in another life was a NASCAR race car driver maybe, because as you're going to this location, you've got to travel at a high rate of speed around U-turns in very thick, heavy, wet mud, and you're sliding a long distance every time you do these U-turns. But if you go too slow, your car will get stuck and then you're done. You have to do that for several miles until you get to the river. Once you get to this river, the river is about 100, 150 yards across. You have to get out, you have to survey the river. If the river doesn't look too deep, then you back the car up and you start going really fast to cross the river. If you make it across the river without washing down the stream, which the first day we arrived, it was too deep. Mandy said, yeah, I'm afraid the car is going to get washed down the stream if we do it. We had to go back the second day and hope the water level had gone down, which it did. We were able to drive across the river, get to the parking area, and then we had to cross these very rapidly moving streams without falling with all of our camera gear. The trail at the Mohihi Trail is barely a trail. It's more like an animal crossing where they're very narrow. They're in many places very, very steep. In a lot of the places we had to grab plants and try and pull ourselves up because there was nothing to get traction with your feet. You can see Mandy's having to help Tammy up because there's no stairs, there's no steps. You know, it's about a 3.5 foot climb just to get out of this particular stream here. Not an easy trail. And, you know, on the way back down, we were at the 1.5 mile mark. That's where Tammy actually had her feet slide out from underneath her because it had just rained and it was slick, you know, just literally kind of going straight down in very slick mud. And that's how she broke her ankle. And she had to go ahead and walk the last 1.5 miles out of here on a broken ankle. Again, we went 2.5 miles up, 2.5 miles back down Took us 7 hours to do that.
Tough. It was tough.
Very, very tough hike. By far the toughest hike that we went on. But we got a couple really, really rare birds, including the akekake and the pu'uieo, which are both shown there. We also had what we called our scariest trip of the year. And as we were getting later in the year, we realized that we had one owl that we still needed to get, and that was the boreal owl. And these can be a little problematic at trying to find a boreal owl. And we had gotten word that there was some boreal owls up at Salmo Pass in Washington State. Again, Salmo Pass is literally just south of the Canadian border, and it's up at a very high mountain level. And I had talked to a couple people that had been up there, and they warned me. They said, hey, the weather's starting to get really ugly up there. It's starting to get really nasty. You know, are you a good snow driver? Are you good at driving on ice and everything like that? And it's like, well, I'm from Florida. You know, you got my driver's license in Florida. So no, we're not really. But we went anyways in mid-October. And sure enough, you leave this tiny little town. I couldn't even tell you the name of the town. And you get on this logging road that you have to drive about 15, 20 miles up the mountain on this logging road. And the higher we got, the icier the road got, the snowier the road got. The car is sliding back and forth across the road to where we finally get up to the location that the boreal owls are at. We were fortunate. We only had to hike a couple hundred yards to get them. And as soon as we got the owl, it just started snowing really hard. I looked at her, she looked at me. It's like, we're out of here. We didn't hang around. We didn't want to go ahead and, you know, check to see what else was around. It was at that point, it was now dark. We went ahead and immediately turned the car and started working our way, sliding our way back down the mountain. Again, in hindsight, very, very grateful that we got down. I kept having visions that there was going to be this documentary about these two birders that slid off the mountain, froze to death, and that people shouldn't have been doing that. I mean, like I said, it was something that was a little alarming to me as the car was sliding so much. Our quickest trip was actually on Thanksgiving last year. We took off on an early morning flight, flew up to Massachusetts, and drove about 20 minutes away from the airport and got our code 4 barnacle goose. That was very nice and posing for us. You can see that selfie of Tammy and I on the right. The barnacle goose is on the green across the water back behind us. And those are Thanksgiving emblems Tammy put on our heads through the art of Photoshop for it. But literally, we were back home by 3 p.m. Tammy had a turkey in the oven at 4, and we had turkey dinner watching football by 6 p.m. Not bad to say we started the day in bed in Fort Myers, went up to Massachusetts, got our bird, came back home, had turkey dinner by 6 o'clock.
It was a fun day.
Our favorite bird, this is a tough one. You know, again, so many of the birds. I mean, I could sit there and just talk for hours and hours and hours about probably a quarter of the birds.
But it's okay, I won't let him.
So she's going to yank my chain and tell me to quit. You know, if we had to narrow it down to one, it would probably be the EEV, which is predominantly found on the Big Island of Hawaii. Ever since I had seen a photograph of this bird, this was one that we both just wanted to see. You know, the brilliant red colors, you know, the black wings, and that huge hooked bill. I mean, it's just a stunning honey creeper. And to sit there and be able to see numerous EEVs and to be able to record them sing, it was really, truly a magical experience.
And this is where I'll just insert a quick plug for our friend Mandy Talpas. She was our guide in Hawaii, and between nursing a broken ankle and everything that we did, she was fabulous. And I just highly recommend Mandy if anybody's interested in birding in Hawaii after all this COVID stuff is over with. Our most memorable moment, There were so many, it was really hard to come up with a most memorable one, but we narrowed it down and decided it was probably our experience with the crested auklets on Gamble. They're beautiful birds. The babies fledge off of the mountainside and they get lost and don't make it to shore or to the water, and they can't walk and they can't fly. So if you don't rescue them, they'll die. And we walked around Gamble and collected baby auklets and put them in the water. And it was just incredible. And fun fact, baby crested auklets actually smell like lemons. So who knew? There you go. You can use that in trivia. Our 700 bird, 700 was a magical number. We really wanted to hit 700. And as the movie says, 700 is rarefied air. And we were on our first trip. We were in Nome, Alaska. We knew we were going to hit 700 for the year in Nome. And so that was just so cool. And Dave and I had worked so hard all year to keep our number close and make sure that if I saw a bird, that he got to see the same bird, if not on that day, on another day, because we really wanted our year to be a joint thing and each of us have the same number at the end of the year, kind of save our marriage. I wouldn't want to beat him. But so anyway, we were in Nome. I'm looking through the scope. We had rock sandpipers fly right in front of the scope and land. And I look for Dave and he's nowhere around. I look down the road and he's talking to some man down the road and they're looking at something, and I'm waving and I'm, trying to get his attention, and he sees me waving and he waves back, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so about the time he came back, he's talking about this gorgeous Savannah sparrow that they saw down the road. And I said, Dave, I just had bird 699 rock sandpiper and they're gone. And he was like, oh. And so he made everybody around us on that trip look for rock sandpiper in that moment. And of course they were nowhere to be found. So we got on the bus and we headed down the road. And I think it was Dave who actually spotted this willow ptarmigan. And so the willow ptarmigan was my 700 bird. And about 10 minutes later, the Aleutian tern was Dave's 700 bird. And for a whole day, I was ahead of him until the next day when he had rock sandpiper as well. So I was kind of hoping he didn't find any more. It would have served him right. Our first bird of 2019 was a wood duck here in our house, a wild wood duck that flew into our pond. And the last bird of 2019 was, all of a sudden my mind's gone blank, Kalish pheasant. And this was on Kona in the Big Island. And we celebrated the end of our year with a luau with our guide, Mandy. We just had a great evening. It was a great way to wrap up our year.
I'm going to go through just a few of the better birds we saw last year. We had 4 Code 5 birds. We had the Antillean palm swift, the red-legged thrush, the dark-billed cuckoo, and the scaly-naped pigeon, all found here in Florida.
The Code 4 birds, we had yellow grosbeak, we had black-faced grassquit, crimson-collared grosbeak, golden-crowned warbler, the white-throated thrush that I spoke about earlier, thick-billed vireo, red-flanked bluetail in Los Angeles at a library about 5 miles from where our kids live, blue-footed booby, little egret, Key West quail dove, plain-capped starthroat, the barnacle goose, that was our Thanksgiving goose, the gargany and Salton Sea, Nazca booby, and pink-footed goose. But probably the best thing that we had along the way were all the friends that we made. It was really great to get to meet all the people as we were birding. The guides were fabulous and so helpful. And you make lifelong friends when you're traveling and you have a love of birds.
Just kind of hitting on a few statistics as we close out here. For the year in the new ABA area, we ended up with 788 birds, obviously well above the 700 we had hoped for.
And new ABA means it includes Hawaii.
Yeah, correct. And then in the traditional ABA area, which is Alaska, Canada, and the lower 48, which again, we had no birds in Canada. We had 744 in the traditional ABA. And in the lower 48, we had 715 birds. So to put that in perspective, on an all-time basis, in the new ABA area, we're now ranked with the 10th best year ever. In the US, we're ranked 10th best ever. And in the lower 48, that was the 3rd best ever lower 48 big year. And again, especially proud of the fact that Tammy has the best lower 48 big year of any female in history.
So to kind of recap, we started out our year hoping to have increase our life birds. We actually had 102 life birds last year, so that was pretty incredible. And I think the thing we are most proud of is that we photographed 98% of, or recorded 98% of the birds that we saw. And probably the question that maybe some of you are asking is, okay, well, where are you now in 2020? So far in 2020, in the lower 48 and Hawaii, because we got to bird a few days in Hawaii at the beginning of the year, we're at 722 for the US. So that's our year.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I'm so jealous. So I'm going to, pardon me, take questions. I have a few here. Let me just see what, you've covered a lot of the questions, but what new destination would you like to return to? Or what was, I guess, before a new destination?
Well, obviously, last year, it was the first year when we did the reposition cruise. So definitely, we want to do that. And I would say St. Paul.
Yeah, we want to go back to Alaska. We had scheduled a trip in the spring of this year to go back to St. Paul and bird St. Paul in the spring with all the breeding shorebirds and unfortunately, it was canceled. So we're hoping that in 2021, we'll be able to get back.
And St. Paul is another island in the middle of the Bering Sea, and we really enjoyed St. Paul.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And the rooms were a little nicer than on Gamble.
No bed bugs, huh?
No bed bugs at all.
So which life bird was the most exciting to see?
Oh. That's a tough one because they're all exciting when they're life birds. I mean, that's the thrill. I love the chase. I was telling him I love it when a rarity comes up and we just throw caution to the wind and we like jump in the car and we can go chase a new bird. So
maybe the dark-billed cuckoo, because
yeah,
we were actually
rare.
Well, very rare. We were actually in Jacksonville at a client meeting and dinner when our phone started blowing up with texts about the dark-billed cuckoo. And obviously, you know, we don't go anywhere without binoculars and a camera. So even to client meetings.
Yeah.
So they were packed in the car, and literally, you know, as soon as our client dinner was done at 9:30 that night, we drove straight down to the dark-billed cuckoo. We arrived at the hotel about 2 a.m. in the morning, and you know, we were at the park at 6:30 in the morning and had it pretty quickly.
Yeah, so that was a cool bird.
That was very, very cool.
So just, are there questions in the chat? I haven't looked at the chat. Karen, are you seeing any questions in the chat?
Click on
Not
the
many in
chat.
the chat. Most of them are in the question in the Q&A. Open the Q&A.
Okay. All right.
When you were doing your big year and you observe a bird that you can't identify immediately nor photograph for whatever reason, what step or approach do you take?
We don't leave. I mean, literally. I mean, if you can't ID it, and you can't get a photograph that you can research later, we stay.
We don't leave till we can ID it or photograph it. And the photos, you know, obviously last year especially, it was really important to us to try to document all of our birds. And so, you know, we either wanted a recording or a photo, and some birds you can tell by with a recording as well. So.
Oh, and actually, to answer Sebastian's question, the +2.
Okay. Referencing the Wikipedia ranking tables that were shown towards the end of the presentation, what does the +2 stand for next to the number of birds in the count?
And actually, we need to adjust the table because the +2 has dropped off.
Yeah.
The +2 stands for 2 birds that were not ABA countable, but were under consideration to be ABA countable. One was the great white pelican that showed up at Ding Darling and was under review by the FOSRC.
Mm-hmm.
And the other, I don't remember off the top of my head what that was.
Yeah.
But again, they ultimately both were rejected because they could not prove the provenance. The other was the house crow. And the problem with the house crow in Sarasota is that they can't say definitively if it was fed on the ship along the way.
And then somebody's asking me about the East Coast person and the group out of San Diego. Our East Coast person is Michael Brothers, and it's with the Marine Science Institute out of Sebastian, I believe.
Is Michael doing it now, though?
Well, with
he did
COVID,
this year.
he's not, but next year I'm sure he'll pick it up
Yeah.
again.
That's a great trip.
Yeah, it is. And they are doing the pelagic trips out of San Diego. So if you just Google San Diego pelagic birds, it will come up and you'll get the contact information for that. That was for Jennifer.
And actually, Jennifer, one thing that we did this year that we didn't do last year was we went on a 5-day pelagic trip out of San Diego. It's called the Searcher. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It
by far best pelagic trip.
I mean, it just is so far off the charts. You get incredible birds like Guadalupe murrelets. You know, we had blue-footed booby, Nazca booby, Cook's petrels. I mean, just some incredibly coated birds on the 5-day Searcher trip.
Every year in September.
Yeah. And that booked up very, very far in advance.
Yeah.
And somebody was asking about birding in Hawaii, which is something I've always wanted to do.
Contact Mandy Talpas, Talpas. She's the bird guide in Hawaii that, I mean, she is just, I can't speak highly enough. She's top notch. And if you want a wonderful Hawaii experience, she's your girl. She books everything for you. And she's so organized and does a great
Where is
job.
she based out of?
She's based out of Waikiki. So you start your trip on Oahu and then she customizes the trip for you. You know, we wanted to go to the 3 islands and then we wanted to go backwards in January and do the 3 islands again. So we had them for 2020 and she booked our rooms and arranged transportation and she's your girl, Mandy Talpas.
And actually, Steve, as far as your question, is Hawaii best in December and January?
Yeah.
No. Actually, it was kind of like, oh, I got an idea.
It was a surprise.
Let's finish up the year in December.
It was my Christmas surprise. I actually didn't know we were doing this when he booked it.
You're actually better to be there in the fall.
Yeah.
And again, Mandy can tell you the better dates. Like I said, this was not a designed big year. It morphed into a big year. And again, by the time I planned this as a surprise Christmas present for her, that's when we could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have any other time that we could squeeze it in.
It's a slow time for us usually in the holidays because Dave's a financial advisor, so portfolio manager, and so Christmas and New Year's is a good time for us to.
But you
to
miss
get
a
out of
couple
town.
key birds going in December and
Yeah,
January.
Yeah.
And actually, there was a bird we got in January that just arrived that we missed in December,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate.
So are you doing a big year this year?
Nah,
No.
we haven't done a big year yet. We consider ourselves big year birders in training.
Yeah. We just have fun, you know, we enjoy seeing the birds, and you know, I enjoy the photography and the hiking, and Dave's a statistics guy, so he loves planning and looking at all the statistics, and you cannot do a big year unless you have someone who can do the research and figure out the bar charts on eBird and do all the research to tell you where the birds are most likely to be seen. And we couldn't have done our big year without our friends, Erie and Jennifer, to watch our house. I mean, it takes a village.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot involved in it.
And how about the expenses involved?
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
Fortunately, we're very blessed with a very good job.
And we've
And-
saved, and all of our kids
Yeah.
are now, you know,
Our-
self-supporting and on their own and through college. So
But it's not something that's cheap.
no.
Celeste, to answer your question, learn eBird.
What is your advice?
Yeah, what is your advice to
beginner
beginner birders?
birders?
Learn eBird inside and out, and memorize the bar charts. That's when you're going to know when a bird is going to be around, so you can plan your trips when the probabilities are at their best for you.
Or you could marry a guy who loves to look at the bar charts, and then you don't have to.
And Celeste, feel free to inbox me. I'll be happy to talk to you, over the phone and tell you, more precisely how to do the steps. And Judy, I think you know us well enough to know that we spend a tremendous amount of time. Every location we go to, I have a target list of birds. I know exactly where we're going to have the highest probability of getting them. I have a backup for each of those birds, and then a backup to the backup. Because the idea is, as soon as we get all of our birds at a location, we're done, we head to the car. We move to the next, we literally move to the next spot. Erie and Jennifer just spent 8 days with us out in Colorado, and they know. It's like, okay, we've checked off all the birds here. There's nothing else that we're going to get here that we need. We're out of here. And you just, you prepare and you know what you need.
You have to be focused on, when you're doing a big year, you have to be more focused on, getting your birds and less on the experience, which was actually very difficult for me because I totally enjoy the experience. I'm one who wants to close my eyes and listen to all the bird sounds and look at all the wildflowers and take lots of pictures. And Dave's like, okay, got the bird check.
We gotta go. Time's ticking.
So we've kind of had to find a balance there, which is not always easy. Are you trying to make 2020 a big year too? I think somebody already asked that.
Yeah, I already asked that.
Zan. What does a code 5 bird designate? A code 5 is a rare bird. It means that it's been seen, I think, fewer than 3 times
in the last 30
years.
Last
30 years.
Wow.
In the US.
So that's it's a pretty rare bird.
I mean, and actually, the ABA, you can go out to aba.org and you can read up. They go code 1 through 6. 6 basically means they're no longer found. They're gone, like the passenger pigeon. A 1 is a bird that's very common. You can read the specific definition on aba.org for all of those. But code 5, that is the toughest to get.
What's the name of the pelagic trip to the Dye Tortugas? That is the, I'll think about it.
You said the Yankee Freedom.
Yankee Freedom,
Yankee
thank you.
Freedom, thank you. And then who was interested in birding first, and how did you convince the other to start birding? We both love nature. We were both kind of into birds and nature, and
Really at a young age.
And he watched the Big Year movie, and then he made me watch it. And it's the first hobby that we've found that we both are just totally obsessed with. And we both love it. And we're very blessed because I know that's not always the case with couples. So yeah, we both just love it.
So internationally, if you were going to pick one country you'd like to go to
Colombia.
outside of the United States or outside of North America, where would you want to go?
Colombia.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
That'll
that'll be our international trip when it's safe to travel. And what was the most common bird that you missed? I don't know. I think the most painful miss was when we were in Big Bend. It wasn't a common bird. It was a red,
slate-throated redstart.
slate-throated redstart. And we got up on the mountain and we were so excited that we got the Kalima warbler, and it was getting hot and we were exhausted and, you know, carrying all this water that you have to take because it's so hot. And we turned around and went back down the mountain. And when we got back down there and got to internet, we discovered that there was a slate-throated redstart being seen. And we just didn't have it in us to go back up. So plus we had to get back to work. A lot of our trips were over weekends, or, you know, where we took maybe a day off here or a day off there, because, you know, we still had to work all throughout the year. So we couldn't just stay until we got all the birds.
And just getting to Big Bend is a big deal.
It is. It is. Fortunately, we have clients
in Midland, Texas.
So we were able to kind of mix business and pleasure there, which is what we always try to do because, you know, again, we've got to work. The photographic equipment, we both have Canon 7D Mark IIs. I primarily use my 500 fixed lens, which is an f4. Yes, I do hike up all these trails with it. No, when I fell and broke my ankle, I was not carrying it, thank goodness. I knew that was going to be a tough trip, so I had my 1-400 lens on that trip. And that's what Dave birds with. He birds with a Canon 1-400 lens. So, and then we have binoculars. We have Swarovski. I have a pair of Bleicas. We have a pair of Vortex. It all just depends on what binoculars we grab. So I think that's all the questions.
Actually, to answer Terry, we're leaving tonight for the Bahama Swallow tomorrow.
Dave will be working in the car while I drive tomorrow morning. So
where is this? Is this local or in Florida? I want to know.
This is at the Hawk Watch down the Keys.
Florida Hawk Watch. They found 2 or 3 Bahama swallows today that were kind of hanging around the Hawk Watch, which is on Curry Hammock State Park. And very rare bird. It would be a life bird for us. So we're leaving tonight to drive down as far as we can. And then we will be getting the Bahama swallow, we hope, in the morning. And there was also a
red-legged thrush,
Cuban
subspecies
that has been down there, but it was not seen today. So we don't know if it's gone. It could pop back up tomorrow. You never know.
Wow, you're so inspiring. I want to get in my car right now.
We'll meet you down there.
We'll meet you down there. Come on, everybody.
I've done some pretty nutty things. That's what birders do.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to have you. And I'm not, this Zoom works really pretty well, and you can get in your car right after you talk.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us, and thanks everyone for listening to us tonight. We hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, so just to speak about our next announce our next speaker, in November, we'll be having Leanne Rodriguez of the Conservation Foundation speak to us about the amazing victory of finally rescuing orange hammock, which has been a real commitment, I think, even for the Sarasota County Commissioners for a long time. But she's going to talk about finally landing that victory for conservation through the Conservation Foundation. So look forward to seeing you again then. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming tonight. Karen, thank you so much for all your hard work.
Okay.
You really got our